Well, hello again. It's been a little longer than I anticipated when I put my last video out. If you watched my kind of channel update video back in April of this year, I talked a little bit about some of my plans for the channel going forward, my hope to put out a video maybe once a month or so at the very least, and other than the spring Lightroom updates video that I put out I think a week after my channel updates video, it has now been over 4 months since I released anything. Not to go into all the nitty-gritty details of what's been going on with life and everything. I have been very busy from a photography standpoint, also been very busy from a personal life standpoint. If you did watch that channel update video earlier in the year, I shared some things about some personal health issues I was having going on. We had some health issues with our oldest dog, who unfortunately did pass just a few weeks after that video. We had to say goodbye, so life was very chaotic for a good month or two around that time in general. Also, unfortunately, my health has been a roller coaster continuing on throughout this year. Fortunately, I've been feeling better of late, but we're still working on trying to get the medication dialed in, on the right medication to hopefully get me on the right track and keep me on the right track. I want to share some quick updates about what I've been doing, and then this video, actually the intent of this video is to share some stuff that I actually shot in the field, which is also ironic because in that video back in April, I talked about I probably wouldn't be doing any in-field video. I want to cover that first because this video is going to be a little bit different in terms of the format. And I actually was out in my local park last week. We had a little bit of a break from the hellacious summer we've had here in Texas again. And I was able to get out in the morning when it was only 75 degrees when I woke up at 5:30 a.m. or whatever it was. Quite chilly for us of late. And I went out with the intent just to kind of check out the park, see what kind of shape it was in. We've had a horrible drought, way too many days to count of 105 degrees or higher. So it's been a rough summer and didn't know what the park was going to be like. It's actually in good shape, so that's nice. But then as I was out there, I decided, you know what, I'm going to just take some little behind the scenes phone video and share them on my Instagram stories. Next thing I knew, I was back home getting ready to share and upload stuff. And I had about 18 minutes of footage. So the reason I'm sharing all that is I shot it in vertical orientation. So obviously that's not a great orientation for YouTube. I'm going to do some things with formatting to hopefully make it a little less jarring. But anyways, that's the gist of it. But that ties into one of my big focuses over the last few months. And I don't think I necessarily talked about it too much or at all in that video back in April. But one of the things I've been really trying to home in on or focus on is sharing more around my processes and behind the scenes and things of that nature in terms of authenticity related to photography. I wrote a blog post about a month ago now, or I published a blog post about a month ago now, talking about that very topic and authenticity in photography, especially nature photography, as we go into this world where manipulation tools and Photoshop and other software tools out there are getting more and more advanced and really more simplified, that you can do things very quickly with a few clicks or typing in a few keywords such as generative fill or replacement in Photoshop in the current beta version. And also you look at things like Midjourney and DALL-E, the AI image generators that are out there. And how do we know that what we're seeing is actually real and authentic and something that represents an experience? So I've been putting efforts into that in terms of my blog. And that's where this video came into play as well, or the video snippets that you'll be watching here in a moment. It's just showing a little bit behind the scenes of, hey, these are my experiences. This is what I really saw and witnessed, and tying that into the photography that goes along with it. And then one last thing I want to touch on really quickly, the big project I've got going on right now is I'm starting to prepare for a volume 2 of my Look for the Light folio. If you did watch that video back in April again, I had talked about that was the project I had towards the end of last year, kind of following Ben Horn's footsteps in terms of putting together a small print portfolio as a way to enable people to collect some of my prints at a much more reasonable price point than buying standalone larger size prints. So this will be another collection of 8x10 prints. Should be 10 images, still working out the final details. But again, it'll be presented, if you can bear with me here, in the lovely soft touch paper folio. This is my volume 1 edition. Right now, I am currently going through the process of making all of my proof prints and then making my determination of which 10 images are going to be included. So that's always a fun process when going through, I think I've got something like 40 or 50 images that I initially selected as candidates, and now I'm weaning those down. And I lied, I do have one more thing now. Speaking of that spring Utah trip, again, I had alluded in the video that I had just gotten back from that. And here we are. Let's see, I got back April 1st or 2nd. And it is now September 8th, and I've not released a single photo from that trip yet. Honestly, between the dog's health declining soon after, really while I was in Utah, and very much so rapidly after I got back from Utah, and then dealing just with the loss of our sweet little Lou Bear, really wasn't feeling in much of a mood from a creativity standpoint to sit down and edit some photos. So there was a long delay in terms of me sitting down at the computer and starting the work related to that trip. I'm excited to say I have been cranking away on that, and I'm excited to share the outcome of that. I'm going to be doing another ebook for the gallery release of all of those images. I've got a ton of images I'm really happy with from this trip. It was weird coming back from the trip. I didn't feel all that enthused about my productivity in terms of photography. I think a lot of that was just, I knew that the dog's health was struggling a little bit while I was gone, and then coming back, it was very obvious that she was struggling. So I think they just had kind of a negative impression around the trip and my photos from it in general. But sitting down and starting to work and culling through the files, I think I've got something like 140 candidates from an editing standpoint. I would expect that when all is said and done, it's quite likely I'll end up with anywhere from 50 to 75 new images going to my portfolio, which is insane. When I talk about Utah, my 2022 trip to Utah was my most quote-unquote productive trip ever in terms of portfolio images. I think I added 28 or 29 new images to my print portfolio or print offering on my website. And now I'm talking about 50 to 75, maybe even more than that. Feels a little crazy, but I'm really happy with the work. So it is what it is. So working on that stuff, that should be coming out soon. Gist of it is, if you want to keep tabs of all this stuff, be sure to subscribe to my newsletter so you know when these new offerings come out, whether it's the folio or the ebook related to the Utah photography trip. I'm continuing to churn out blog post, part of what I've been focusing on there too, beyond just that post around authenticity. I've been putting out trip report post for that Utah trip. It's obviously well overdue at this point, but I've got 5 posts already up right now, which again are all kind of behind the scenes related, just phone snaps, a little bit preview of some unedited photos and whatnot. But those are live now. The next edition, the final edition of that trip report series, will be going live this coming Tuesday. So that's like the 11th or 12th, somewhere around there. So that'll be going live and finally wrapping up that series. And then I've got an Unframed series as well, where I dive into one specific photo and the process that went into creating it in the field or editing it on the computer, or a combination of both. Again, a behind the scenes look, but related to a specific single photo as opposed to a broader trip over multiple days and dozens or hundreds of photos, what have you. With that all out of the way, without further ado, let's jump into my experiences last week. I am very excited to be back out at my local park finally. First time since May? Yeah, first time I've even charged my battery since May. Because, 75 degrees when I woke up, which is chilly for us right now here in Texas. Anyways, I've already got one composition framed up right there. Right now I'm just kind of waiting on the light. If you look back in the background, you can just see a hint of sunlight hitting those taller trees back there. So I'm going to wait and see what happens with this as the sun comes up. So we'll see. I'm not expecting to get much in terms of photography this morning, but I am happy to say that the park is not nearly as rough as it was last summer after I got out for the first time after last summer's drought. And this summer's been as bad, if not a little bit worse. So that's good. Things are greener. I don't see as many dead looking trees. A lot of the trees that did die last summer appear to have fallen, or at least some of them. So might have some interesting compositions there, but we'll see. Otherwise, I'm just happy to be out. Tired of sitting in the house. Got the smell of the trees, all good stuff. And maybe I can start getting in shape for Colorado this fall. So anyways, more to come. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. So it's never going to do it justice on the back of the camera, but this is the composition I've got, framing this dead tree nicely with the green background. There's a little bit more contrast than what it looks like on the phone here. But anyways, just going to see what happens with those gold leaves as the sun starts hitting them. I'm a little worried that the background is going to get blown out before those leaves do, or maybe not blown out, but too bright before the dead leaves get lit up. But we'll see. I got nothing to do, no rush, so we'll just hang out for a little while at least. It's going to start getting hot here pretty quick once the sun comes up, but anyways, that's the comp. There's possibility there while I wait for the other one. Nothing like boredom to get the creative juices flowing, or at least curiosity. Might do it black and white. Why not? I'm becoming less certain that standing around for the last 20 minutes or so is actually going to pay off. Whoops, it would help if I looked at the screen. I think those leaves are just going to get totally lost in the bright background, but we'll see. I did take a shot, kind of getting a little bit of, if it'll focus, a little bit of light to dark. We'll see what it looks like on the computer. I did zoom out a little bit too, just I know I'm going to crop this regardless, but wanted to have a little bit more wiggle room to play with there. So, little sidebar while we stand around waiting for that light back there. If you aren't using a wireless remote, can't recommend it enough. Best thing ever. I've got the Canon BRE1. I've actually got one for my, it'll show there, my R5 and my R. That way I'm not having to sync them back and forth, since I use both cameras pretty regularly these days. Easy for me to say. But anyways, beauty of it is I can wander away and be kind of poking around, looking for the compositions, doing my thing, sitting on a rock, sitting in the back of my 4Runner. And as long as I'm within 20, 30 feet, I don't know, I haven't tried it any further than that, I think, but I can trigger shots. I can even, since it's got the autofocus button, use that, in theory, there we go, to wake the camera up. I've already exposed for the highlights on this one, so I can just take a shot. Look at that, hands free. Plus it just feels kind of cool. I don't know what it is about it. Their nice thing is you can trigger video with it as well, but also a 2-second timer. The only thing I don't like about it is you can't do burst mode. So that's kind of disappointing if you're set up and a bird flies in suddenly or something like that, and you want to try to fire off some quick burst. You got to actually change the drive mode on the camera. At least that's how it is on the Canon R5 and Canon R. But anyways, very handy little gadget. Well, this is a new obstacle. Looks like this is one of the poor trees that did not survive this summer. Split right open. And now I get to duck and not catch my tripod on the tree. So I did give up on that composition. Just as clear as the sun was rising and those dead leaves were getting lit up, they just weren't going to stand out against the green backdrop anymore. So I quit on that one. I'm now up on the main trail, so there's some road noise, which is annoying. But you can see behind me, kind of, sort of, there's a lot of dead brush. Grass is not surprising, but many of the trees are brown as well. The crazy thing is, this is so much better than last summer, though. I came up almost around this exact time when we got a little bit of a break last year, and everything in this upper part of the park was just burnt to a crisp. Not from fire, just from sun and drought and too many days over 100 degrees. And this is still pretty rough. Again, you can see back there, there's a whole lot of trees that are very much a crispy orange. But I don't know, maybe it's just false memory. I'll have to pull up some footage and some photos I took from last year, but I'm pretty sure that this is way, way better than what it was last year at this time. So, I don't know, we'll see. Last year, coming up here, I'll go down a little like S-curve drop down into a little bit lower elevation, which again here in Texas means like I'll go down 50 feet, because that's a steep hill. But anyways, last year when I got to that point, as soon as you hit just that little bit lower elevation, everything was green. There were way fewer dead trees, way fewer trees that had kind of gone to, I don't know if it's a thing or not, but what I call false fall, and turned brown and orange. So I'm curious to see if that holds again. But yeah, I mean, I would say, yes, there's a lot of trees up at this upper part that are burnt, but again, nothing like last year. I'd say maybe 25% of the trees are looking rough. And the cool thing is, last year we got a ton of rain, record-breaking rain at the very end of August, which we're not going to get this year. But trees that I was afraid were dead, or that were just totally orange, or brown leaves from the drought, they bounced back and when I came up here the next time, and I think it was early October on a foggy morning, they had greened back up, which, I don't know, maybe just ignorance on my part, but I certainly wasn't expecting that. Yeah, so last year, this is still on the upper part, all of this was orange and brown. And it looks a little worse than it is on the camera, I think, but you can see there's still some decent green mixed in even on these trees that have turned. But there's a fair bit of green in here still. Last year there was nothing in this section. It looked like it was late autumn. Now it looks like as I come up around the corner up here, we're going to get into maybe a little bit more. I did take a shot here just around this bend here last year. I think I called it False Fall, which reminds me, I don't think it's actually in my portfolio on my site, but anyways, took a shot up here. Bear with me. Right up here. There we go. It was, if I recall correctly, I'm 99% sure, of that main tree back there. And it's a little rough looking, but you can see there's still a fair bit of green in there. And again, last year, all of this was just pure brown. So I'm actually surprised. I was worried that 2 bad summers in a row would actually be worse, but thankfully that is not the case. Now we're going to get into some shade. Right up here, we'll climb down the massive Fort Worth mountain into some lower elevation. And this is why I'm going to be screwed when I'm in Southwest Colorado, because we just don't have elevation here. But anyways, you can see here though, it's still the same thing as last year. As soon as we get down looking into the lower elevations, it's much greener than the upper part. So I don't know if it's a soil issue or just a microclimate difference, but everything down here is looking good so far. I've been coming to this park since 2012, 2013, I think 2013. And you would think, it's not that big of a park, you would think I'd have more or less explored all the trails. Went down a side trail that I just discovered last year and took a little offshoot off of that I hadn't taken before, hadn't noticed before. And this is a prime example of the challenges with photographing in Texas woodlands, at least here in central North Texas, whatever you want to call us. There's just so much scrub. You can see all that stuff back there. I feel like there's a composition out there with some of these old gnarly trees. Just can't get to them. So I find myself in this park and then just in Texas in general when I've explored, you're doing a lot of your shooting from the peripheries, meaning from the trail or just off the trail. And then, I don't talk about it as much as I should, but I do adhere to the nature first principles. So I'm not going to go traipsing through and breaking bushes and branches and smashing twigs down and stuff like that. So, it can be frustrating. Of course, you also have to be careful of things like that. What are those, prickly pears? I don't know. I'm not a horticulturist. I don't even know if that's the right word. But anyways, those things are all over the place. They've done extremely well this summer. They got big old needles on them. So we're certainly not going to go traipsing through that stuff. And then there's other like thorny little vines and stuff. Twigs that want to, poke your eye out. But anyways, it's just some of the challenges. I think what I'm going to try here, though, is use my 14 to 35. Let me try to get this. I've got this really cool fallen twisty tree, and it kind of leads into the cactus there. See what I can do with that potentially. Maybe black and white, although I like the golden color in the background. That might detract from the overall composition too much. So anyways, we'll get the camera out and we'll give it a go, because why not? Digital is cheap. Now, given I haven't come to this little spot before, can anybody tell me where the trail is? I think it's this way. that it? I think that's it. Although I don't remember stepping over this dead tree. But the good thing is, I'm in Fort Worth. I have signal. I can just pull up the map if need be. So let's just go for a wander. And by the way, what the hell is this? There's no camping or fires allowed here. Good news. She's alive. The old witch has survived another summer. Thank goodness. Every year I'm expecting that poor old tree to finally give in, but it keeps hanging on. The other great thing about those wireless remotes is if you're like me and you abhor using lens hoods, unless you absolutely have to keep rain off or something, you can walk around, and if I can get this right again, I can shade my lens. I can get far enough away that hopefully it's not in the composition, although I'm shooting pretty wide, and hit my trigger, and there we go. Look at that. Okay, another moment of truth. Coming up on a little cove offshoot from the lake here. And the lake was pretty low last year, lowest I've seen it probably since 2013. I think the news had a story there tonight, and if I recall correctly, they said it's 8 feet lower than it was last year, which would be pretty nuts. It's one of the lowest lakes / reservoirs in the North Texas area this year. And let's see what we find. And yep, that is pretty low. A couple years ago, I took photos of that tree with these grasses in the foreground, all that good stuff. And none of this grassy area was exposed. It was all underwater. And I can't say it looks like 8 feet lower than last year, but I'm going to go with it is definitely lower. So I'll have to pull up some snaps I took last year of this, but yeah, pretty sad. What's crazy is I think the record low for this is something like almost half this level, which is just nuts. That was well before I was born, but either way, another dry summer. Well, decision time. Just took a little snacky snack break. Got some water. Anyways, whatever, you don't care. Now at the point, it's a little after 9 o'clock. The temp has gone up 3 to 4 degrees just in the last like 20 to 30 minutes. And I've got quite a few stretches, both on my way back and in other parts if I keep going where there's no shade whatsoever. And of course, as that sun keeps coming up, I'm not going to get the tree shade slanting across the trail either. I'd love to get back to the main lake, especially with the water being lower, but it's 3/4 of a mile or so just to get there, assuming I don't stop. So, you know, call it 20 minutes at a leisurely pace. And then another, 3/4 of a mile, if not longer, if I go a different route, get back just to here. And then from here, I've got, I think, 2 miles, something like that. So I'm getting low on water. It's going to keep getting hotter. It's going to keep getting sunnier. I hate to admit it, but I think I'm just going to be smart and go back. Hopefully, we've got a string of mornings at least that are supposed to be in the mid upper 70s. So hopefully I can get back here. I won't be able to get back here for a few days, but hopefully I can head back up here maybe Saturday morning and just jet straight through, get to the lake, see what's going on there. Because last year there's some cool little details along the water's edge that aren't normally visible with the higher water levels that we've had the last many years until last year. and grass is growing up in the sandy beach, some driftwood and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll see. But either way, man, it's just nice to get out. I actually think I got some decent photos this morning, so I'm also kind of anxious to get back home and offload those onto the computer. So anyways, thanks for following along in my adventures in sunny, dry, flat North Texas. Bye.